Evening and welcome to a Christmas special of the Magpie Circle podcast with myself and Mark Stallard. As you can see, no expense spared in the Christmas Magpie Circle broadcasting studio. Santa hat, Notts County, black and white, and you can see a little bit of spare golden tinsel I've put on top of the shirts for our Christmas special. Now, I was hoping tonight we could all be full of the jollities of Christmas and be really happy, festive spirit, and we all try to be. But there has been something of an incendiary interview that's gone off this week that's caused, I think, a little bit of angst, depending where you are in the supporter base. It's either much ado about nothing, to quote Shakespeare, or it reaffirms some fans' thoughts that the club lack ambition to get into League One. This follows Director of Football Richard Montague's interview, in which he spoke about outperforming the playing budget, saying it was roundabout on the in and on the edge of the playoffs, but kind of critically saying that effectively, if big money offers come in, they would be willing to sell both strikers on the understanding that would strengthen our promotion hopes. Personally, I'm not sure how you can sell your two best players and strengthen your promotion hopes. However, to each their own. Martin Patterson's replied briefly today, I'm focusing on what we can add to the group. Read into that what you will. Interesting when it comes to the use of the word alignment in that. We'll discuss that at the top half of the programme. Second half will hopefully have a bit more festive jollity. Stell can tell us what it used to be like, how many Christmas days he never had off from the age of 16 at Derby for the rest of his footballing career. We'll be looking ahead to Chesterfield, Boxing Day, complete sellout according to Jurgen. It will be the biggest ever crowd at Chesterfield. I think they've sold just about every single ticket it is possible to sell in the ground, and that they expect to be announcing a record crowd at Chesterfield. MK Don's not too far away. A goalless draw after three straight wins against Wolves, puts us down to fourth place, unbelievably tight. Your thoughts and views as always. Thank you as always to our official partners, JH Accountants, Big Shed, Trent Navigation, and Over the Road. Let's see your thoughts and views. Are you worried about what's coming up in January? Do you think this is a storm in a teacup and we're going to be absolutely fine? Okay, right, I'll get rid of the Santa app for the first part. And don't forget, there's now 12 tickets left of the additional 30 that we've put on sale for the Jim O'Brien evening. 12 left, so I would dive in very quickly, multitask or second screen while you're watching this show. If you want to get those tickets, only 12 left at Over the Road on Thursday, February the 12th. I have to think about that for a minute. Right, before we read any thoughts, look, we always try and be very balanced and objective on the show. It has caused a few ripples, Stell. We've seen Martin's brief response today, and I'm sure, to quote him, he will stay in his lane. What are your thoughts on it all?
The Richard Montague interview.
Yeah.
You know what? First and foremost,
with a January transfer window, when the previous two have not, to be fair, been much great shakes.
Yeah, would not disagree particularly. But the first thing I would say is that, and I know you said you've had a look at the message. I don't see the messages that have already sort of come in. I don't see them. So before you said they're polarized views, if you like, people have got differing opinions on it. What I would say is that we had this before when Richard was here. We've interviewed him on here.
Yes,
I think he's very honest and very open and transparent. Almost to the detriment sometimes. I'm sure the people that are coming in with the viewpoint whereby doom and gloom, we're looking to sell and what have you. But I think I'm glad he answers questions and doesn't duck issues. I think somebody who's been in football 10, 15 years treads the line of, well, we'll see what January brings. No, we're not actively looking to sell players, but knowing full well exactly the status quo is as it is. Every player has its price, and that's basically, for me, I think what he said. You know, is there a scenario where we could sell Jatta and Dennis, who are at the minute probably the two most saleable assets that we've got? Well, he's saying for the right price and early enough in the transfer window, there is a scenario where that could happen, but they're not actively seeking it. And it would have to be so beneficial for the club financially, as well as giving them time to replace them, that they see as it being in a better position. Now, I think, you know, I like the fact that he answers that question, and I think that's a dead honest answer, because you could come out and waffle your way around it, but that is the state. If you're in League Two, and you're trying to build a sustainable club, I'm afraid that is it. Players do well and they get coveted by other clubs. Their price goes up, of course, but every player has a price, as we've seen. And throughout football, it will always be the case. So for him to come out and say, you know, words to that effect, I think that's being honest with the fans. You might not always like what the honesty is, but if you can't, if you can't handle the truth, don't look for the truth, But that is the fact of the matter. I could have told you that. Anybody could say that. Given enough money, anybody is for sale. So I think I like the way he speaks. I like the way it's open. I like the way it's been discussed. I like to say, you might get people go, oh yeah, puts the fear of God into us that we're going to sell our two strikers. I don't think that's the case. I don't think realistically that's the case. But if it is, there would be a massive amount of money coming into the club, and I think more than anybody could realistically expect. So look, I didn't read into it that they're actively looking to sell anybody. I read into it that it just means every player has their price. And like I say, that has always been the way in lower league football. And you could say that almost right to the very top at times. But I don't see anything he said as being a negative in terms of ambition or things like that. I think it's the reality of football when you're trying to when the diktat come down from the top is a sustainable football club.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the challenges I have with my fan hat on with it, Stel, is that we are the largest supported club in Division Two by quite a long way. I've looked, we're 9,800, whatever the average crowd is specifically. The nearest clubs to us are something like 1,800 fans lower than us. Swindon and Bristol Rovers, I think, are up there. So that kind of revenue coming into the club is fairly substantially larger. And I think, as a legacy of Derek Pavis, ultimately, our ground is a decent ground, very good ground for League Two. Hospitality areas are very good. The club have got the commercial department going really well. They're maxing out money. They've got the nest. When we talk about, which he talks about the budget being in and around the playoffs, so you take that as somewhere between fifth and eighth, something like that. I think it's difficult when you and I know that it's virtually impossible to balance the books of any professional football club in the 92. It's virtually impossible. And we've had this new phrase in that from Richard about outperforming the budget. If I'm being flippant, another meaningless metric and league table that we're kind of creating that makes Notts County look really good, rather than the most important one of all being in the top three for automatic. Bromley, 3,000 crowds. And I think, look where they are. I think the frustration of elements of the fan base is that, while we accept, were we to get to League One, we lots of clubs there losing 5 million, and we can't expect the Brothers to fund 5 million losses in League One. Totally get that, but I don't think you can kind of hand around a proverbial begging bowl when we are the biggest supported club currently in this division, in League Two.
Yeah, look, I absolutely get it, and you're right. With them facts, the thing we've always got to remember, I suppose, and we've spoken about it on here. And we had Kieran Maguire on, didn't we,
Yeah.
to speak about the finances of football clubs, and absolutely, without getting exact, but pretty much
No.
90 of the 92 are running at a loss, aren't they?
Yes.
So, sustainable football club becomes running at a loss that is manageable.
Yeah.
Now, and as much as we want to have this old, is it a sort of a romantic view that, average fan base should equate to where we are budget wise? But it doesn't, unfortunately. Yes, it helps turnover. Yes, it helps the club as a business. Yes, it helps the atmosphere in the games. Of course it does. But a lot of, you think of any club in any recent year, the big budgets, they're not the biggest supported clubs. They're the ones with the owners who are willing to put in, or should I say, write off the biggest amount of money. And the minute
Yeah.
they get bored, the club could potentially be in massive trouble, whichever club that might be. So you have to marry the sort of romantic view of we're the best supported club in League Two, which we are, fantastic fan base. You want to see that 10,000 average throughout the season, and because that makes the club even more sustainable, of course. But you have to marry that with, if there was a scale of, if the owners get bored, how close to the club's going out of business? And you mentioned Chef Wednesday, you look how close they are. We've been there, Derby County in recent years.
Yeah.
Clubs almost every year, it seems somebody is in peril. And that is when an owner gets bored of putting the money in or sustaining that loss. So the Reach brothers sustain a loss at Notts. Even though we've got the biggest supported crowd, what they don't sustain is a bigger loss than they already do to make us the biggest budget in the division. Other clubs have got that risk level, or other owners, clubs,
Yeah.
fan base have got that risk level. So again, we MK Dons are probably the big one, aren't they? In terms of budget this season, whoever their owners are, if they just suddenly get bored, MK Dons as a club are left with an unsustainable wage bill that's way above ours, and they either have to sell players as assets that probably wouldn't cover the debts because players are on contracts that don't get written off, and they won't find the same money elsewhere. So they're gambling with the club's future, as we've seen at Notts over, two or three various, times in the last 30 odd years. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying and the sentiment of that. And we want to be the best supported club. But that doesn't, unfortunately, in the world of business of football, translate to mean that we are going to have the biggest budget in the division, because others are bigger gamblers, bigger risk takers. But if you looked at a league table of which club's most likely to end up in administration out of League Two, we'd be somewhere down near the bottom, because, we are trying to get this sustainable. And again, sustainable doesn't mean paying for itself. Sustainable means a loss-making company that is, within the parameters that the owners are willing to accept. But we are on sound footings, and then it comes into, right, we've got a budget that's, if you want to say top seven, and again, nobody ever really knows the exact figures of
Yeah.
these things. But if we're top seven, then of course the idea is to have a top seven budget, but end up in a top three position. And that's where all the data and everything comes into it, and trying to employ people to overperform things, as I assume Bromley are doing at the minute. But I know nothing about their finances, but they're doing brilliantly well. But as we know with League Two, that top half of the table is so tight, it can change very, very quickly. So yeah, it's always a difficult conversation, because we always want, and I always say this, we always want to play with monopoly money. It's
Mm.
dead easy to spend other people's money. Really, really easy. Why don't we go and sign a £1 million player? Why don't we just do this to have a gamble to get into League One? Gambling with other people's money is really, really easy. When it's your own money and it's your own business model and everything on the line, then, you have to have a business head on it. You can't get swept up in the emotion of, oh, come on, let's just spend, because I say we've had that in the past, and we've had a taste of where it can take us. So we all want success. We all want better players. Martin wants better players, but I think we have to accept that that has to be within the parameters of whatever's affordable to our owners. Um, and I know that's not going to please everybody. Of course, it isn't. We all want better players. We all want more expensive players. We all want free up the budget if we just do this. If and every one of us playing sort of devil's advocate, but playing fantasy football, if you like, in January, we'd all go, let's keep Jatta, let's keep Dennis. And do you know what? If we could just add another striker who's a proven striker and put his wages on the bill and pay some money for him, and then another goalkeeper we'll want, which Richard Montague's admitted that he's looking at as
Yeah.
well. And there might be one or two other players, and all of a sudden you're spending a heck of a lot of money. And as we know, it doesn't guarantee you anything, because if money guaranteed you anything, Carlisle last season would have been promoted instead of relegated. So it is a big gamble, and you have to have guidelines and parameters within that budget and in that business side of the things. And I think they try to communicate that to get the fans on board with exactly why we aren't just out there spending $500,000 on this player, $500,000 on that player. David McGoldrick, I think he's one that we'll come back to. His name hasn't been mentioned because we're doing well and we've got 2 goal scorers, but he was all the talk for the first month of the season. Why didn't we keep him? Why didn't we do that? And people will say, and it certainly wouldn't have made us worse. Of course he wouldn't. He would make us better. But people would say that what if he was injured? What if he was out of form? We're wasting all that money on the wages. So there has to be a pragmatic sort of view at times within a football club. We can all speculate. It's not our money. But I think that, going back, I think Richard, I think he's spoken well. I think, yes, maybe a little bit too honestly at times, because he leaves himself open to a little bit of not criticism, but a little bit of, speculation about, does that mean we're not ambitious? But I don't think that's the message at all. I just think it is a pragmatic sort of business streamlined way of looking at things.
But in the overall context of football, and you're a football man, still more than any of us, the values of Jatta and Dennis, given that both have got at least another 18 months on their respective contracts to run, that value isn't going to change materially or significantly between January and May. If you're Martin Patterson, and you've achieved what you've achieved, does he not deserve the right to at least go with the same players to maximise and give ourselves the best chance of getting ourselves into League One? Because I think sometimes at that point, the pressure will ease off in terms of we must go up, we must do this. There is a huge pressure on us. We removed the manager, Stuart Maynard, last year because we only reached the playoffs. So one can only assume the brothers felt that wasn't good enough. So if playoffs isn't good enough and you get rid or part by mutual consent, whatever the phrase is, it would be not unreasonable to base this year's objective as automatics. And yet, do you not think that there has to be a gamble of potentially accepting you could lose one or two of your star assets, when in reality you're talking about a cash flow deferral at worst of 6 months to give yourself the very, very best chance of going up?
Yeah, I agree and I absolutely agree with that. And again, I go back to what Richard Montague said. I don't think what he was saying is we are looking to sell Jatta and Dennis, but what he's saying is everybody has their price, whether it's Jatta, Dennis, Magpie, anybody, they've got a price. That hold on a minute, we can't not turn that down. So go on, without throwing numbers about, without putting the minutiae on it, if somebody came in with £2 million for Jatta, are you saying that any Notts fan would say, no, we shouldn't take it? Because I think they would look at that and go, well, we can replace him for that and bank a bit of profit for it.
Okay.
So again, and I'm plucking a figure, might be a ridiculous figure out of thin air, but that's
Well,
it.
let's
And just one thing.
on.
Sorry, Paul. Just let me go.
on.
Well, just one thing to put in. I agree with you when you said, is his value going to change between, whether it's Jatta, Dennis, anybody? Is his value going to change intrinsically between now and the end of the season? And I would go, generally, you would think not. And that would be my opinion. One thing that just throws a little bit of a question mark into every footballer's thing, and I am absolutely touching wood while I say this, is cruciate ligament injury will change his value. Absolutely like that overnight, as it would to any player. So that's the gamble. It's not always, well, just keep him till the end of the season. He'll be worth the same amount of money. He probably will, yeah. It might even go up. You don't know, depending on what happens in the season. And it does give us our best chance of promotion to keep players that are already there, settled in the team, know the way to play, and are doing well and scoring goals and are confident. Of course, option one is to keep them. That's option one, priority. But there is always this underlying unspoken thing about player values, is that his value is not going to change unless he gets a long-term injury, and then it will change. And then, but none of us have got crystal balls, so you have to weigh up the risk factor, the calculation, and then that's how they come out with a value for every player. And if somebody exceeds that, and you think, like I say, with all the data, with all the research they're doing, in and out of transfer windows, data on players, if they back themselves, let's not forget, this is the data model that's brought in Jatta in the first place. It's the data model that's brought in Matt Dennis in the first place. It's also the data model that's brought in the likes of my Traore as well. Not such a success at the minute. So it has hits and misses, but they will back themselves to be able to find a replacement, given, as he said, time and money to do so.
Okay, good debate. Let's get some messages from the flock. Merry Christmas. All great. Good result Saturday. Shows Notts can mix it with the best in the division. And P.S. I've just got my Jim O'Brien ticket, says Steve Geldard. But Chatwin, festive seasonal blessings to you all and your families. Let's hope we can continue our good run well into the new year. He goes on, does Bud 7 points from 3 of these 5 games against teams in and around us, and another clean sheet. It's looking good, and we still have Matty and Robbo to come back, not including possible signings in January. Jonathan Hammock's breaking news. Kidney stones have been blasted. Only 4 left. Crikey, how many did you have? Tremendous result. Just in time for Christmas for me. Even if we lose the next 2 games, we're doing all right. I wondered if the nurse who gave me the anaesthetic for my op, says Jonathan, would qualify for a pre-assist. He says, tongue in cheek. Big shout out to all those at City Hospital for looking after me. Richard Elvian, interesting interview with Richard Montague. Sounds like a new keeper, and a message for bids on AJ and Matt Dennis to arrive early. Not sure any guarantees can be offered for replacements if and when. Steve Geldard, sounds like there's a lot of interest in our stickers. I think he means strikers. I think them Panini stickers have gone down well, haven't they, in the last few weeks, I'm told. A while since I used to collect them. Also sounds like we know we won't sorry, something with Pato's input, knows what he wants, fit in with his ideas. Yeah, we're not really talked about, if you're Martin Patterson, what are you thinking of all this? Jurgen Pye, listen to the Chesterfield podcast. Biggest gate in 45 years at Chesterfield. Complete sellout, Jurgen tells us. Ian Haywood. Disappointing to not have got the ball in the back of the net against Walsall. Another poor ref chalked on our dartboard. Let's hope we can get a right result at Chesterfield. Only the second league game we haven't scored in so far this season, says Bud Chatwin. Not bad going. John Parnham, not surprised at all by the result against Walsall with their quality defence. I'm much more optimistic about our game with Chesterfield. Tough going forward. Says Donny Pye against Walsall. Our attack was snuffed out. Beto was immense for me. He may not get a goal too often, but how many has he stopped so far? He's my player of the season. Colin Metcalf. I have my views on January and deal with that when it happens, as the job is only half done for now. A massive well done, though, to everyone for the first half of the season. It's exceeded my expectations. Donny Pye says, I thought Richard Montague's interview was interesting and positive. Let's hope it's all true. Ian Cooksey, the interview was interesting. And lays it on the line for us. I think if bids come in early and they are acceptable, one or both of the strikers will be gone. Let's hope the replacements are of equal ability. Donny Pye. As for Martin Patterson, he's built a tough, aggressive and disciplined squad as far as I'm concerned. David Amy, if offers on the table for strikers, they have to be well over what we got for Langstaff. Ian Cooksey, what worries me is that if it runs true to form, we will get some under 21 striker from Norwich who, let's just say, doesn't think he's very good at scoring goals, before I read any more of that out. Adam Kent, evening from evening from Newark. Should be wrapping my gifts, but snuck out to my county bar, a glorified shed in lockdown, close brackets, to catch up with news and views of the flock. Gazalee, crikey, have we heard ourselves? You just thought our season completely imploded from some of the comments. It amazes me how Notts fans are always a half glass empty. Tim Watchorn, any failure due to selling of the crown jewels will reflect badly on season ticket sales next season. Adam Kent. Essie sends her apologies, but she has too many presents to wrap, so only one member of the Kent household listening in. Hello from Karen Knight. Duncan Comrie. Merry Christmas, everyone. Every player at every club has a price. It's not just us. Trust in the process. Jurgen Pye, I think Richard's comments are designed to put Jatta and Dennis in the shop window. Adam Kent, has anyone else mentioned the player who cannot be named, starting with L, ending in Angstaff? Evening all, says Lippy Jane. Ian Cooksey says, in response to Gaza Lee's comment, it's not that it's imploded. I think some, me included, are probably judging the last January 2 windows, which have been overseen by Richard and were not massively successful. Royston, evening all, what a week it's going to be. Can't wait to see who's coming in. There's hundreds of them here tonight. Merry Christmas from Maggie Grant. Bandini, 3 points against Walsall would have given us a free pass against either Chesterfield or MK Dons. Now we need to avoid defeat in both games, I think. Ian Cooksey, let's not forget the CEO's comment at the fans forum. It's easier, or paraphrasing, to be more self-sufficient in League 2 than League 1. Donny Pye, Richard Montague hasn't put AJ and Matty Dennis in the shop window. They've done that themselves by scoring goals. John Parr, Merry Christmas, everyone, who adds, I think Richard was honest. This is the reality of the football world, not just as Notts. Adam Kent, as for Chesterfield, I bought tickets on the 1st of December. Having not received them, was told by Notts ticket office to contact Chesterfield. They were closed today. Anyone else with issues? I could be your saviour, Adam, because I've done this before. This is where I'm not very technically savvy sometimes, Stell. I think you will find, well, I know mine are, they are not actual tickets. You would have been sent an email with an e-ticket. So therefore you print off your email, Adam, that is your ticket, or you can keep it on your mobile, unless for some reason you got a different kind of ticket. So check, but my understanding is, I stand to get this completely wrong, but they're e-tickets. So you would not be waiting for an actual ticket. Don't take that as gospel, but I've gone down to a ticket office before. Where's my tickets? And they said, it's on your email. Oh, okay. Retreats out again. Right, there's 101 more, but I want to get some thoughts and views from Stell. Let's just square away. As a player, when you are talked about and, big money offers or potentially, and, if we look at Bruno Fernandes, let us say, right at the top of the tree, clearly wanted to get it off his chest a few months later. Manchester United were ready to, sell me, woe is me, all the rest of it. Isn't that terrible, blah, but I wanted to stay. Given what Richard has said, as a former player, how do you react? Does it affect you at all or not?
How do you react is obviously that's personal to each individual.
Yeah.
That depends what your mindset is, what your makeup is, what motivates you. How much you listen to this sort of stuff as well. How
Yeah.
much it be. How much you
But they would
sort
have heard
of.
about it, won't they? They'll have
Of
been
course,
ribbing in the dressing room, won't they? Walking in, hanging your coat on your peg,
I was
you're off
gonna.
the
Yeah.
Papa Mill, all this lot.
You scored 10 goals or somewhere near that, by Christmas, and in the dressing room they'll be pulling your leg and all sorts of like I say, ribbing going on. Jata scored basically a goal every other game since he's come to the club,
Yeah.
and as we spoke about, you get your 5-game ban at the start of the season, then you get a back spasm, then all of a sudden there's all sort of conspiracy theories going on, and that'll be perpetuated in the dressing room as well. Like I say, they're not immune to it. They you don't go around with your, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil kind of stuff. It goes on and it's cutthroat in a dressing room. And like I say, good and bad and all that sort of things. Everybody has things brought up. So it will be, of course they will know. But as a player, if you're performing well, if you're performing well, the chances are that somebody's looking at you. Somebody's looking at you all the time. Scouts are at every game for various reasons, whether looking at players, whether they're researching teams that are coming up or whatever. But there are people watching every game. And if you get a run of form going, then you're going to create interest. So the sort of stock default answer would be it doesn't really affect you. Not really, because you're in a good run of form, you're feeling confident, you just want to keep on playing. You want games to come thick and fast because you're playing well and the game seems easier than normal. You know what I mean? So you're in a good space, as they sort of say. So it shouldn't really affect you. The only time, and I'll go back to my playing days, the only time it ever really affected me is if I had an agent that sort of spoke to me like day or two before a game, oh, so and so's coming to watch you. Specifically,
Okay.
this, oh, don't tell me that. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know. You don't want to know. You want to have this sort of ambiguous. Yeah, there are people there watching all the time, but you go out and play. You don't want somebody telling you specifically somebody's coming to watch you because you think, you go out from doing your normal routines and it changes the way you think about things. And that's not meaning you want to move. It just means, it's just took your focus off just preparing for another game. So it doesn't really affect you, is the stock answer. But then it comes down to the individual, and it comes down to, look, if somebody is hankering for a move, and I'm not saying anybody at Notts is, but any player anywhere, if you're sort of looking for a move, then potentially it could affect you positively or negatively coming round to a transfer window opening up in a week's time or so. So yeah, it is a personal sort of issue, that sort of thing. But I would say on the whole, footballers are fairly simple creatures. You focus on playing, and if you're playing well, that generates interest. You just concentrate. You want the next game coming round because it's another chance to add goals or play well or do whatever to add a little bit of value to yourself and to do well for your team and bring success.
Nigel Natras says, it's all a storm in a teacup. It has always been the case that every player has his price. While Notts are in the lower divisions, we will always have to consider decent bids for any player. Stephen Newton, Salah will go to Saudi Arabia if the price is right. Donny Pye, every player will leave one day. If not, then Les Brad and Stell would be starting against Chesterfield.
Les might. I don't think I would.
Slightly different point of view from John Parr. I think if not, don't take this window seriously. in terms of improvements to the squad, then owners and Richard deserve any criticism that would come their way. Let the DOF, Director of Football, do the signings, says our friend Greza. Merry Christmas from Dale Pikett. Notts on Saturday had the biggest gate not only in League Two, but in League One, and the crowd was also bigger than one championship game. John Parr makes another point, which I think is pretty salient. Football clubs are basically a not-for-profit business. Andy Easom. AJ would have gone in August if the bid hadn't come in late in the month, which left us with no time to adequately replace. Any January bidders will have to strike early or we won't do business. Greza Maxwell. Let the director of football do the recruiting. Let the owners own it. Let the manager manage. Let the commercial department bring in the money. The club's in a healthy position. And if anyone needs any floors doing, I will do it for Notts free of charge. I've just added the last bit in, Greza, but obviously I know you like to make your contribution. Jurgen Pye, counter view. I'd be in this one, by the way. Manager has to have a say in recruiting. Nigel Natras, Jurgen, he does. But Chatwin, manager should have a say in what type of players he wants and their attributes. Let the DOF look for possible people to suit the bill. Just saying, Jurgen, says Greza, that it looks to be ticking along nicely at the moment. So let everyone do their jobs, if you get me, my friend. No need to get. I know you're not being aggressive, Greza, but yeah, I mean, it has opened a bit of a, if not a can of worms, a good debating point. Jurgen Pye, be interesting to see how Stevenage are doing better than Port Vale and Doncaster, now in the bottom two of League One. I was reading, and I think this is perhaps just something to, I don't really want to labour the point about the whole thing about recruitment, budgets, operating losses and profits. And I think me and Stella have both said we've tried to steer clear from this in the run up to Christmas because it don't kick in till at least January the 1st. But I think this week it has raised the level of that debate. In relation to Stevenage, Jurgen, I was reading an article. They've got an owner in there, costs him $5 million a year. That's what he says it costs him. And we spoke a few weeks ago, Stel, the two clubs that broke even and were run by trusts and run very well by trusts were Exeter and Wimbledon. And both of those have basically had to issue an appeal saying we cannot carry on in the present format of being a trust. We need money. We're running out of money. We haven't got it. We need external investment. And the appeal then is for people to lob in $250,000, $500,000 to let the trust carry on running the club. Yeah, good luck with that. But you picked up on this point as well, Stel. When the brothers came in, losing roughly, and they budgeted for this, 2 million in non-league. Rochdale, I think, posted their year ends, and they lost 1.8 million as a result of relegation. And there does seem to have been a bit of explosion, which is a point that Richard Montague picks up on in terms of salaries and wages. And 5 million is there's more than half a dozen clubs in League One currently losing 5 million and more. Okay. And that's a bit of a sea change from when the brothers came in. We've spoke about salary cap style. We've league somehow trying to formulate an agreement. As far as I'm concerned, this ain't going to change. I think these figures are going to get bigger still. I think we're talking 5 million for a League One club. I think in another 2 years' time, you're talking 6-7 million. I just think that is the way it's going to go. And the only way I would ever foresee it suddenly crashing is if TV money suddenly dry up, which affects the Premier League, which affects the Championship, which filters down to League One, which filters down to League Two. I mean, I'm not quite sure where we all end up with this, but I think in 2 or 3 years there will be 0 clubs of the 92, because I don't think there'll be any trusts left that can physically operate a football club.
Yeah, like I say, I think you're right, but this is sort of like a perpetuating problem within football, and again, a problem that's been around for decades, not just recently.
The sums of
You
money are
know,
so much bigger now, though, aren't they? Still, they're so
yes,
much bigger.
yeah, they are, but that's natural inflation. That is
Yeah,
inflation
yeah,
of figures of anything. I mean, just an anecdotal story last night. My dad's just had to have a new boiler, and he's paid more for the new boiler than he paid for his house 50 years ago. You know what I mean? So if somebody had told him in his lifetime, you know, you'd be paying more for your boiler in your life than you do for buying a house, you'd look at it mad. On that progression, in 50 years' time, price of a boiler will be £250,000, just about. So get a new boiler while you can. But that is inflation. That is how
yeah,
things move on. And to bring it back to something relevant, which I've gone completely off key there. But yeah, Richard Montague speaking about, ultimately getting into League One, trying to be competitive in League One, get us established in League One first. The rhetoric when they came in originally, the Reach brothers, was about, we've got the funds to probably get us into the Championship,
yeah,
but that would be sort of the limit to the funds that they've got, the wealth that they've got, and so be. You can't have more funds than you've got. That's what it is. And I think with that inflation, listening to Richard speak just the
yeah,
other day, it was very much a case of, look, we still want to get League One, and then we want to be competitive, and we want to establish ourselves in League One, which is the right thing. No talk of going bang bang, because the money now in League One is increased from where it used to be. So maybe that's just brought a bit of a reality check, and also with Richard Montague being at Swansea for a bit, I think that's maybe one of the things that's opened his eyes to seeing championship budgets, championship salaries, championship sort of income and expenditure sheets, balance sheets of a championship club. Say Swansea is a similar size sort of club to Notts historically. But
mm,
obviously they've had success in the last decade or so, and gone on and been in higher leagues. So their revenue increases, and the money they get from TV increases. But so do their outgoings. And I imagine Swansea make far bigger loss than Notts County do, but they're perceived to have had more success. But as a business, you would say maybe they're not more successful. So football is that oddity that success doesn't translate to your balance sheet.
no,
As success on the pitch does not, it costs, it comes at a price. So trying to say beat the bank, if you like, trying to beat the bookies, but trying to perform your budget is Nott's way of going, can we get value for money on every aspect? And whether that's commercial, whether that's players, every aspect of the club as a business, can we maximize the value that we're getting to overperform, which makes us sustainable? It doesn't mean we're breaking even, but it makes us sustainable. And I think they know that you go up the divisions, yes, the success comes, yes, more income comes, but that's not all profit, because your salaries, your player salaries increase massively as well. And if you want to sustain at a higher level, then it's just a natural feature that your wage budget has to increase. And like you talk about there, Stevenage, they've been in a higher division than us for I don't know how many years now. But you're not telling me Stevenage are a bigger club than Notts, because they're not. But they're losing £5 million a year.
yeah.
So
Or the owner
again,
is.
well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the owner is, while ever he's owner of the business.
Yeah,
But Stevenage is a club, an entity. If the owner walks away, they're still losing £5 million. It's just they've not got somebody to write the check to pay the bill. So again, it's you've always got to be careful with this, what I call, fantasy football spending.
yeah,
We've had experience of it, 2 or 3 times. We know it all too well. So I like the way the club is being run now. Do I want us to get up into League One? Absolutely. Do I want it this season? Absolutely. Do I think we should keep Jatta and Dennis? Absolutely. Unless we get ridiculous money early enough and we can replace them. And even then, maybe I'd only sell one given a ridiculous offer. But I've always try and think about the football side of things in context with Notts as a business, because like I say, you only go back to my day where we 18 months in administration,
Yeah.
fearful of the fact that there was going to be a club, you know, g- from any month, 1 month to the next. The realities of that, you know, it's easily forgotten when when you're not in it. But believe me, that the realities of that, as we all know, really, we don't want to go back to their dark days. They are dark days, so we don't want to go back to that. Yes, of course, we want promotion. Yes, of course, we want success. But more than most, we want a sustainable club that is playing attractive football, that is winning games, that is good to go and watch, and gives themselves a chance of success. That's what you want. And I think at the minute and over the recent years, I think that's been provided pretty well. But they've got to kick on. You know, that's not to say the job is done. They've got to kick on. And I think the ambition is still there. Well, I'm certain the ambition is still there to go and do that. But I think you've got to be, you know, again, going back to the honesty of Richard Montague, you've got to be honest with people and say, look, this all costs money. This all costs money. We'd all like five more centre forwards, three wingers, you know, two goalkeepers, a centre midfield, three defenders. You know, we'd all like more players on more money, better. But somebody has to draw a line somewhere. And also that means on players going out as well. There is a value that is reached. And when you ascertain that, then you believe you can improve things, then so be it. That's the nature of football, the turnover of football players.
Robert Minister from Australia. Good morning, all. I'm on leave from work down under and have slept in. I've just started listening in the last 10 minutes. Ian McQuillan. Hi, boys. Happy Christmas to you both. I'm chuffed at what we have achieved so far this season. We are a different team this season. Any of our flock that can't make Chesterfield, please contact me. The appeal for a Chesterfield ticket. There's appeals for Chesterfield tickets, Jim O'Brien tickets, crikey, yes, all in short supply at the minute. James Moore, I've got to admit, if we had none in and a none out January transfer window, I wouldn't be worried. We have a good squad. Our biggest concern was goalkeeper, but credit to Roos, he has improved over the past few weeks. Grezza's telling us about his latest floor experience. Can't be asked to read it anymore. Ian Cooksey, Exeter have got very lucky by drawing Manchester City in the Cup. That is financially massive for them. Yeah, let's not mention cup runs in Notts County. We don't do very well. I know one poster somewhere has made a valid point. You know, had we had a run, got banked £250,000, would this have made any difference to seemingly how Richard has spelled out the situation of valuations? I'm not sure it would, actually, if I'm honest with you. I'm not sure it would. I think that is kind of the rationale. And you know, some will agree with it, some will not. But Chatwin has got a solution. Put a spending cap on teams. Problem with that, Bud, is that will be basically appealed by the PFA immediately. Very hard to get that in. Steve Geldard, if a player's wages continue to go up, then it is the supporter who will pay the price in season tickets, pay on day, and hospitality. Gazali, if you think a boiler cost has gone up, then God help us all if we ever wanted Grezza's floor tiles. Have you seen the size of a flooring fitter's house? James Moore, credit to the brothers. They don't make money. Bad signings. I dare say 90% of incoming players have had a positive impact on the first team. I probably disagree with you on percentage, James. You know, Stella and I have had this conversation before. There is no silver bullet to recruitment. If you sign all players on data, does not mean all players will be brilliant. Conversely, if you sign all players with a grizzled 87-year-old scout, does it mean you are going to get all great players?
Well, absolutely not. It's always a hit and miss, isn't it? It's always hit and miss. And just on stat, now this is uncanny. It also highlights how sad I am. It highlights I've had a little bit of spare time this week as well. I did the numbers on the signings in the summer. So the 10 signings that came in the summer in
Okay.
terms of starting shirts
Yeah.
for the 21 league games this season that we've had. Okay. What percentage do you want? Do you want to have a guess? I'll let you have a guess. We haven't spoke about this to anybody who's listening. What percentage of starting shirts are taken up by the 10 new signings in the summer? Only in
Right.
the
So,
league games, this
yeah.
is.
So this obviously includes all the loan players as well.
The
Yes.
loan players, the players that came in the summer, and it's only starting, it's not coming off the bench, it's not appearances, it's starting shirts. What percentage do you think of the 10 new players have started the league games this season?
I'd say you're kind of aggregating up, he says, buying time, each game and the number of the new signings that start the game. So
Yep,
we
so
could say
we've got, there's
percentage of
11
the 10.
shirts.
I would
There's
say
11 shirts. Go on.
30%,
Not
a
bad.
third.
Not bad. 39.4%, if we
Okay,
want
it's
to
a
be
bit more than I
exact.
thought. It's a bit more than I
30,
thought.
so let's say 40%. 40% of the new signings or the recruits in the summer, be it loan or permanent, 40% of them have started games. Oh, sorry, 40% of the starting shirts have been them players. So 60% players that were already at the club, starting shirts. Take Kellerou's out of it, who's played every single game.
I was just going
So
to
you
ask you
talk about
about that. Yeah,
the outfield players, it goes down to a third,
yeah.
exactly a third. So
Even
for the
closer to
outfield
my guess.
players.
That's what I was basing it on.
Yeah. So there you go. So yeah, good guess, good guess. But it goes to show that recruitment. You think every player comes in there, but somebody's saying there 90% have had a positive impact, and yes, that doesn't include coming off the bench, and coming on for half hour, 20 minutes, whatever. But you bring 10 players in, less than half of them are actually starting or starting games. Less than So again, it's that squad element, isn't it? It's that squad element. You try and the idea is you bring players in and you think, well, they're all going to start because they're better than what we've got. But at the minute, where we sit at the minute, 60% of the starting shirts are taken by players that were already at the club last season. So it's never, foolproof. Everyone's brought in to make the club better. And of course, you need a squad of players. But I say the majority of the starting shirts so far this season have been taken by players already at the club. So every window is a chance to add to what you've got. It's not about total change. It never is going to be, 100% hit rate because, that is just not the way recruitment works. What I haven't done, and I'm probably never going to do, is go back over years to see what that percentage stands like compared to previous seasons with this data model. I'm sure they've got the figures, but to see, every summer transfer window, what is the percentage of starting shirts gained by the players that are brought in? And then does that equate to a successful window? I suppose there are other factors, such as making money off players in the future. But yeah, I just thought I did that. I thought that'd be interesting. I was obviously wrong, but
No, no,
but
no.
yeah, that's what I've been doing these last couple of days.
Right. Well, no one's got 39%, but there's a lot of guessers. James Moore, 50%. Robert Minister, 30%. Jurgen Pye, 30. Ian Cooksey, 20. Bud Chatwin, 10. Duncan Comrie, I'd say 45. Knots and Bolts podcast 2%. I don't know whether there's meant to be another naught in there or they've just got a downer on the recruitment.
If I knew everybody was going to be guessing, we should have put a prize on it, shouldn't we?
Yeah, look, it's spot. There's a lot of debate. It's about 193 messages here, and the eyes are going a bit funny here as well. But no, yeah, I mean, look, there is. We've said this before. There's no right, no wrong way, but it kind of harps back to this. The alignment. I think because, and that may be, who knows, while Richard Montague is back and Roberto Gagliardi is no longer here, because we have signed quite a few players, haven't we, who of those players have played virtually 0 minutes, and in Richard's last transfer window before he left for Swansea, 2 of those inverted commas, if you like, hyped signings were Mia Traore and Mr. Jarvis, and they've had extremely limited game time under Martin Patterson.
Yeah, and that's it, and that just shows you the nature of, them players were brought in with a different manager, though. So yes, it was
Yeah.
Richard Montague, but it was with a different manager having his input, and that was a bit of a debate you were reading about 10 minutes or so ago about, and they've said that yes, there's this transfer committee, if you like, or whatever you want to call it, but the manager does have input. It's not done blindly. I don't think it's not done that. Here's the players you doing. There is input. How much we'll never probably fully know. But Martin liked to say early on in the season that he had sort of final say on majority of players. But obviously he wasn't here when Will Jarvis and Mike Traore were signed. So again, it's always using everything you've got to try and input, to try and just, like I say, whatever the average of transfers that are deemed successful as opposed to not throughout football, you're trying to beat the percentages, aren't you? And that's where you have
Yeah.
success. That's where you get value. That's where you beat the bank, if we like. And that's what Knots are trying to get in every facet. They're trying to leave no stone unturned to use everything at their disposal, be it people's eyes, opinions, data, whatever it is, to try and beat the bank, to make the business successful, to make the football club successful, and to make the team on the pitch successful. But again, this is not sort of a binary thing, is it? Football, it's never black and white, although apart from the shirts, this is not an exact science. And that's what's so good about it. That's why there's so much debate about it. That's why there's so many opinions on it. That's why we can have, same Notts fans having complete polarized opinions on one interview from Richard Montague.
Yeah, I remember Howard Wilkinson, who I have an awful lot of time for. He said to me that, and we're going back 40, 50 years ago when he was at Notts, he studied a lot of other sports, rugby, cricket, those sorts of things. And he said football, one of the great beauties of football is that there is a, inverted commas, larger element of luck goes into football as to whether you win a game or not, compared to other mainstream sports like rugby and cricket. Rugby, if you have more of the ball, you're the stronger side, more physical, weigh a bit more, you'll normally win the game. Very occasionally you'll win the game. Cricket sometimes is Ashes. Is it predictable or not? Some would say it was this baseball and all the rest of it. But he was saying football, there is a larger element of luck goes into the final outcome than any of the other major team sports. And that's partly what makes football such a great sport, because there is more of an element of unpredictability to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how you study how much luck's involved, I don't really know, but yeah, look, football is the game, isn't it? It is the one it's the national game, it's the world game. It just
Yeah.
is incredible, and it generates so many opinions. How does it sustain being talked about, being spoken about? How is nobody bought? Not nobody, but how does it not sort of run its time? It's lasted for generations, and it's been the game because it's always sort of sparking debate. It's never been solved. Eventually there'll be a computer that solves chess or something. Things like that. Football can't be solved. You can apply data, you can apply science, you can increase nutrition, fitness levels, all that. But whatever there's that human element to it, it'll never be solved, and it will always give us something. And you never know what's going to happen every Saturday, every Tuesday night, whenever it is. You never know what to expect. And that is whether you call that the element of luck, it's the unpredictability factor, it's form, it's inconsistency, it's human nature, it's everything. And that is why we all love it. It's why we've spent so many years of our life playing it, talking about it, discussing it, worrying about it, caring about it, giving a monkeys about it, it's fantastic, and it will continue to be that way because nobody will ever solve it. There'll always be ways to improve on it. We're still seeking perfection and we'll never achieve it.
And Duncan Conway's kind of took the words out of my mouth. If football really was predictable, thousands of us would have won the pools over the years. Yeah. I can't think of one football manager player when you used to be allowed to do bet on football that ever won the pools, and there'd be Mrs. Smith, 87, that's used the same 10 numbers that got the 8 score draws, you know, to win £1 million. And like, I'd never watched a game of football in her life, but she'd had the same, you know, all these numbers, and I guess that kind of semi bears it out. Anyway, before we wrap up, Chesterfield, Chesterfield. It's a sobering thought, and it kind of just shows how close everything is. God forbid, but this just shows you it's so condensed at the top. If Chesterfield won, they'd have the same points as us, and we've been gladly going along 3 wins and a draw, thinking, you know, we're piling it on, and then Paul Cook's come under a bit of hammer this year, you know, up to a few weeks ago, and yet big derby, biggest ever crowd going to be at Chesterfield Stadium, and yes, we could hopefully go back in the top 3, but equally Chesterfield could be level on points with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've said it week after week, haven't we? This League Two is so condensed, so tight, so it can change quickly, and so different from one game to the next. The consistency is difficult to achieve. So I think it's got to take some credit that they've achieved consistency. But again, it's another tough game. We said at the start of this month, this will play a part, won't it? This is a big, important month. Well, so far they've got 7 points out of 9, as has already been mentioned.
Yeah.
So they're doing well. And when like we said, there's no teams to fear, you know, but there's teams to respect. And Chesterfield are another one of them. They score a lot of goals. They concede a fair amount of goals, although they've only been beaten once at home. I think Swindon, the only team that's beat them at home this season. So it's going to be a tough game, a really tough game. A really good atmosphere. We know the sort of rivalry between the two clubs. We know what's happened between them. There's going to be plenty of Notts fans there cheering us on. There's going to be plenty of Chesterfield fans cheering them on. So it's going to be a tough game, but it's a winnable game. But equally, you know, if you don't go there and don't perform, then you can get done. And then all of a sudden it's 7 points from 12 and the month doesn't quite look so good. So, you know, they'll back themselves, of course. You know, they'll want to be better in the final third than they were against Walsall. You know, we played really well up until the 18-yard box, up until that final ball. And it wasn't to be. But play like that, you're going to win more games than you lose. But you just need a bit more quality in that final third, and I think we'll be fine. But again, this is League Two. It doesn't just happen. They've got to go out there and perform again, but they can do, and that's it. That's the beauty of it. Again, it's Chesterfield. It's a decent team who should be respected, but it isn't Barcelona. It isn't Man City. It isn't, you know, anything like that. This is League Two football where every game is a battle and you have to be right up for it. You have to be, you know, up for the battle, but then you have to have a bit of quality, bit of guile, and that can win you the game.
You will be there still, will you, with Adam?
Absolutely, yeah. Can't wait for it. Yeah, it's the ground that's probably closest to me. Actually, only about 10 miles away from us, so it's closer than a home game. This is. So yes, I should be there with Adam, and looking forward to. It's always a good game in it, Chesterfield, and we've had plenty of ding dong battles over the years as well, with a bit of late drama and stuff like that. So after a 0-0 against Walsall, we'd maybe take a 3-2 again, wouldn't we? Something like that.
Indeed, we would. I'm conscious Mr. Kent needs to go back to wrapping his copious amounts of Christmas presents in his county man cave at the bottom of his garden in Newark. Lots of us, I've got to do a bit of cooking shortly, prep ahead of Christmas Day. Are you doing the cooking Christmas Day still or not?
No. Do you know what we're doing? We are going for a Christmas curry. We are in our local Indian this Christmas. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going with. There's a group of friends of us going. My old man's coming up as well. Something different this year. We've had a bit of bar humbug. We're not going to the local. They've priced us out. So we didn't get in there. So we've talked the local curry house into opening up, and we're having a Christmas curry. How about that for something different?
Really? So you've got the curry house to open up?
Yep. So we're all going down there 2 o'clock Christmas Day. So. Yeah, I won't get too close to me boxing now. I might be reeking of naan bread and biryani or something like that. But yeah, Christmas curry for us this year. First time. It's the first time. We'll see how it goes.
Very good. Yeah, well, I'm a traditionalist, as you know. So I shall be cooking roast capon for the Mace family. So that's good. £12. There's only 3 of us. I'll bring you a doggy bag of capon.
I was going to say, I'll be honest. I'm going to show my what is a capon.
Yeah, always the Mace family when I was growing up. You see, it's a cockerel. It's a male chicken. It's basically it's a supersized chicken with a lot more flavour. Male chicken cockerel. You
Right.
can only get them
Okay.
at Christmas. Yeah, yeah. Cheaper than a
Fair.
turkey as well.
I've heard of him. I didn't know what it was, but
Yeah,
there we go.
it's
Yeah.
like
Oh, lovely.
supersized chicken. And I know at least one other member of the flock, Paul Hawksworth, has a roast capon. Now, his brother, Richard Hawksworth, lives in Royal Marlow. I would imagine with his budget, he's on a roast goose. I can't, never had one of them. About 120 quid a roast goose, Stel. Do you know that? 120 quid for a roast goose, eh?
Well, I'll stick to my rice and naan bread. The thing
Yes,
is,
but
none of us are
we'll
bothered
all
about
be there.
turkey.
Yeah, we'll all be
Yeah,
there
none of
feeling
us are bothered about turkey.
relatively stuffed on Boxing Day at Chesterfield. So that's about it from us. Thank you to one and all. Clearly, we wish you a very, very Merry Christmas. We won't say prosperous New Year yet because we'll be back before that. Stel, Merry Christmas from you.
Yes, absolutely. I hope everyone has a great Christmas. I hope you get everything you want from Santa, including 3 points at Chesterfield on Boxing Day.
Absolutely. Jurgen Pie, bar humbug. Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm having a ready meal for £4.
Why not?
I'll bring you some capon to Chesterfield. So you can, I'll bring you some capon sandwiches, Jurgen. How about that? Amazing Christmas, everyone, says Duncan Comrie. Andy Easom says Richard Hawksworth better not be having a Marlow swan. Yeah, I was reading about a lot of these swans are getting nicked, aren't they? For people to have a cheap Christmas bird. Anyway, no eating magpies, that is for sure. Look, they are. Still got my 2 here. Look, there's one of them. The one's over there. Right. Thank you, one and all. We'll be back. I don't know when we'll be doing my vlog. We'll have to check with Stel's hectic social diary and all the rest of it as to when we're next back. But thank you, one and all, for sticking with us throughout the year and all of your support. There are now 6 tickets, I've just been told, left for Jim O'Brien. So get in very, very quick. Thank you. Thanks to our official partners, JH Accountants, Trent Navigation, Big Shed, and Over the Road. Have a great Christmas, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all at Chesterfield on Boxing Day.
Yeah, cheers, everyone. Happy Christmas.